One last point before we break here, because I find it amusing that all of a sudden there's this idea that Mike McCarthy might save himself with the Dallas Cowboys. It started with Jerry Jones, the owner of the team, saying a couple of weeks ago it's not crazy to think he might get an extension, which McCarthy thought was kind of funny. Well, gee, thanks. Dak Prescott has come out and said he wholeheartedly supports Mike McCarthy. Micah Parsons said last week, it was an interview that aired last night, the pregame show, that he wants McCarthy to stay. After last night's game, and before last night's game, Troy Aikman said he believes McCarthy will be back. Troy Aikman probably in a position to know a thing or two about what Jerry Jones is saying and thinking, because he tends to say a lot of things that he's thinking. After the game, Jerry said this, and this comes from Shireen Williams, who covered the game for us, when he was asked about what Aikman said. Let me just say this quickly. Mike's an outstanding coach. He has an outstanding record. He's got great experience. A lot of what he's about, some of the benefits that we're having out there, we're gaining from the type of coach that he is. There's an old adage, when you start thinking about any coaches, you better give it a good look, because he's one of the most outstanding. I'm not sure that's the adage. I think the adage is this, and I'm done with the quote. The adage is, before you dump the guy you have, you better be damn sure you're going to get someone better. And I say all that because Mike McCarthy's contract expires, and we never see a coach say, I'm leaving. But McCarthy's got a say in this. There could be another team out there like the Bears. You know, I've been saying, hey, the Bears need to think about whether or not, forget about coordinator who's never been a coach. Forget about fired former head coach. Forget about a college coach. How about a coach from another team? And I suggest it in the context of calling a team and maybe trading for a Kyle Shanahan, a John Harbaugh, a Mike McDaniel, if maybe those relationships they currently have are closer to an end than we realize. McCarthy's, we know, is close to the end. There's 4 games left under contract. He's a free agent. He could go back to the NFC North. He could go to the Chicago Bears if he wants. He could tell Jerry, at the end of the longest yard, stick this in your trophy case and walk away. And with all this talk about whether or not Jerry will, deem McCarthy worthy of staying, let's not lose sight of the possibility McCarthy may tell Jerry to shove it sideways.
And you know what's so unique about that is, as a player, when you went into your last year without a contract extension, you took on the chance and the risk of getting injured. And even at this point of being in the season and you have 4 games left, you would be like, all right, don't offer me an extension. I only got 4 games left. I want to see what anybody else, but you still in the back of your mind, you're like, but in these 4 games, if I get hurt, that can dramatically change my free agency. For Mike McCarthy, there's no injury risk. I have 4 games left. Jerry Jones even mentioning contract extension, he did the right. I'm laughing at that. There's no way in the world, if I'm Mike McCarthy, I sign a contract extension, because I don't have to. Like, I'm not, for you to go get the next coach, you're going to have to go through an interview process. You're going to have to do different things that it's going to take you time. So I'm going to have time to figure out what I want to. Chicago might call and say, hey, Mike, we want to offer you this. We want a chance. You get back in the NFC North, a division you know well. We're going to give you Caleb Williams, whatever you think about him. So there's no doubt. Mike McCarthy, think about a month and a half ago, we're sitting there and we're saying, this guy's future, it's going to be over. They're not going to bring him back. But I also think it's so interesting of when you have a team and you have your starting quarterback in there and what you're supposed to do, these expectations. I look at Kevin O'Connell in Minnesota last year. When you lose that guy, of how much of an emphasis goes on your coaching now when Cooper Rush gets in there, and over the last 2 games, he's playing better. You're putting together game plans where you're winning games. You win 2 games in a row, and then you look at this game and you're like, put together a game plan where the Cowboys could have easily have won this game if it wasn't for a special teams blunder. You sit there and now you're like, well, maybe people start like, oh, he is a good coach. Look at what he's doing without Dak Prescott. And like, it changes the narrative of what people and how people think of these coaches. And maybe Dak Prescott getting hurt might have made Mike McCarthy look a little bit better in the eyes of other teams and owners that maybe they're like, man, we had this all wrong. Maybe if he just wasn't in Dallas with Jerry not bringing in the best free agents, Jerry talking after every game, making it even harder for him to coach, he'll be better on our team. Let's take a shot and reel him in before he even has a chance to consider going back to Dallas.
Yeah, and look, if Jerry doesn't like 3 straight years of 12-5 because the playoff success wasn't there, there's other teams that would love to have 3 straight years of 12-5. The Bears need something, and I don't know that McCarthy should want to go to the Bears when you look around that division and what the Lions and Packers and Vikings currently are. But my point is this. It's all framed in terms of whether or not Jerry decides McCarthy is worthy. It's a two-way street. And this is a broader observation I have. You rarely see a coach exercise his free agent rights. There's no salary cap. There's no franchise tag. But I also think there's that billionaires club, professional courtesy, we won't do that to you collusion that kicks in. Because you never see it happen where a coach becomes a free agent, his contract expires, and he says, I'm going to another team. Now, I think coaches are reluctant to give up the bird in the hand, but I also think part of it is the other teams might be reluctant to try to take that coach away. But I just think it's interesting that this is all being framed as, will Jerry Jones decide? Like it's only his decision. McCarthy has to decide it as well. And who knows? Saints, Jets, Bears, one of the other teams that's going to have a vacancy between now and the end of the season, those teams can pursue McCarthy. And just from his perspective, by way of generating leverage, it's in his best interest to see and hear what else might be out there. All right, there's plenty else out there in the National Football League. When we return, last year the Eagles had a collapse down the stretch. So we're all on guard for another one. And there's some consternation about the passing game. And Brandon Graham threw a little log on the fire yesterday that points a finger at the relationship between two of the key players on the offense. Now, Graham tried to do a cleanup on aisle 5, but we're going to break it all down and try to make sense of whether or not there's another thing to be worried about in Philly that could disrupt a potentially special season. We'll do that next here on PFT Live, presented by Accenture. Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.